Today's guest is Michelle Larivee, who is the co-founder and CEO of Within, an acupuncture clinic with multiple locations throughout New York that also sells functional wellness products rooted in Eastern medicine. Michelle previously spent over a decade in finance and consulting before starting Within, right after a devastating ski accident, which left her with some chronic pain. But Michelle, we're really excited to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Alan. Thrilled to be here.
Well, I'm really excited to dive into what you're building at Within, but I'd love to also briefly touch on, what you were doing before. So tell us a bit about your time at Merrill Lynch, IFC, Deloitte, what you learned, and how hard it was to leave that pretty steady and promising career to dive into entrepreneurship.
Awesome. Sure. Prior to starting Within, I had worked, as you mentioned, in the investment banking, finance, and consulting space. I'd actually mostly focused on healthcare and had worked across the industry with hospitals and academic medical centers, pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, and have always felt really passionately about there being an opportunity, lots of opportunities actually within the healthcare space because as I'm sure anyone listening to this knows, our system is very broken and has been for many, many years. And so, from a bunch of different angles, I was able to help, solve some different problems or think outside of the box. And so I think that kind of set a really nice foundation for Within from a professional perspective because I was able to see, some of the trends that I think are really underpinning what we're doing Within today. So,
Yeah.
first and foremost is kind of the rise of the empowered consumer, a trend towards natural medicine, the opioid crisis, destigmatization of mental health, destigmatization of women's health, the need for preventative care and solutions for longevity, and kind of how all of those intersect with rising healthcare costs, a system that's failing chronic pain and other types of chronic illnesses. So kind of all of that just really set a nice foundation for what we're doing it Within. But as you mentioned, it was my inspiration for starting Within was more from my own personal health journey and transformation through acupuncture and Chinese medicine more broadly.
Yeah, and it seems like even now there's a TikTok trend of feeling I'm in a very Chinese time of my life, and people starting to drink warm water and being like open to Eastern medicine.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's definitely an awareness, which is great in terms of what is acupuncture, what is Chinese medicine, what are some of the different practices. And not even just TikTok, but actually in the last 10 days, New York Times, National Geographic, and The Economist all published articles that reference newer studies about the actual science behind the medicine, which is really important because it helps explain in today's consumer and patient terms of what we've known for thousands of years as practitioners, but it explains not just that it works, but how the medicine works.
Yeah. So you were studying or you were investing in the healthcare space and had your accident, but were you always thinking about being an entrepreneur? Was that the plan, or was it because of the accident and you're like, oh, wow, this is really effective. I need to get the word out?
A little bit of both. So both my dad and my grandpa and my stepmom are all entrepreneurs. So I kind of grew up with that spirit and had, kind of toyed with some different ideas and had, varying degrees of progress and success with those over time. But for me, it was really this specific idea and the catalyst of my own personal health journey. And I just felt super passionately about it, that it was worth leaving my career and really pursuing it.
Yeah. So was acupuncture the first thing that you had tried, or was it, after
Probably
trying
the
the
last
traditional
thing I
sources?
tried, actually. You're talking about in terms of just kind of healing from the accident.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I think I read that you were initially skeptical of maybe the practice, and it was one of the last things that you tried, but then it became one of the most effective.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I was skeptical. I would just say that I was unaware of
Mm,
acupuncture as a modality. But by the time I actually came to try acupuncture, I was open minded to honestly trying anything and had tried pretty much everything at that point, both Eastern and Western types of practices. But
yeah.
what was really great about acupuncture is that I was able to stop taking painkillers and muscle relaxers pretty quickly. And then, the pain resolved. But I think what became really interesting was that I call it side benefits. But as I was going regularly to work on the pain, I realized, wow, I'm also sleeping better. I'm less stressed. I'm getting
Mm,
sick less often. It wasn't just about acupuncture. I was taking herbs and trying cupping and gua sha and different parts of Chinese medicine, and really adopting some of those that you mentioned, drinking warm water. So different aspects of the practice, and realized that it was actually impacting my whole health overall
mm.
more holistically and preventatively, and that felt really empowering.
Okay. And, you started going through these practices and adopting these modalities. When did it become, okay, I actually need to start this business, and
Yeah.
give us the timeline?
Yeah, totally. I would say it was several years into my journey, because what had happened was, while the results were amazing for myself personally, and I'd say one of the other areas of health that the medicine really helped me with was fertility. And so, kind of fast forward a couple years after my ski accident, I actually had some fertility challenges, but through acupuncture and herbs was able to successfully get pregnant. So again, like a hugely life-changing experience that was a direct result of medicine.
Yeah.
Um, but my own personal experience started to become frustrating. It was challenging to get an appointment. It was expensive. A number of kind of different barriers. And then I also, because I had been doing acupuncture and Chinese medicine for several years at this point, I had learned about all the different benefits that I had no idea about, whether that was migraine prevention or endometriosis and PCOS, or,
Yep.
allergy relief. And then started recommending to many different friends and colleagues and family members to, take these herbs, try acupuncture, do cupping. And what I realized is that there was a lot of interest, and everyone was very open to the suggestion, but then it wasn't easy for people to get started.
Mm,
How do I know where to go? Not easy to get an appointment. It's expensive. So, kind of similar frustrations that I had. And so that, I think, was kind of also part of what made me realize that there was a really big market and opportunity and a need, for these types of solutions, but doing
sure.
it in such a way that it was really accessible. And so that's kind of how I like to describe what we do at Within, is accessibility in every sense of the word.
Mm. Okay. So when did you actually, put down the groundwork to start building out Within? And I think you also raised some venture funding. So how did you decide
Yeah.
between raising venture funding or, bootstrapping the business?
Yeah. Well, it was a pretty obvious answer in terms of requiring funding, because we're doing, ground floor build outs in Manhattan that, cost close to $1 million, plus other startup costs and things like that. So it required funding from the
Yeah.
beginning. I would say, what was important was to find either angels or institutional investors that really understood, what we're doing. We're doing something that people haven't tried before in terms of, creating a new category, mainstream category in the wellness space. Taking an ancient practice that was, really not well understood, at a widespread level. And then also, I was very aware that, I came from a finance and consulting background. So I was also looking for investors and advisors that had built brick and mortar businesses, that had
Yeah.
also built brands, because, we're not inventing the medicine, but everything comes down to kind of hospitality and the experience and the branding. And so really, was looking to have partners, like the founders of SoulCycle and Heyday and Sweet Green, that had done that before and could really help, not just at a strategic level, but also tactically with things like sourcing real estate, negotiating leases, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into it. I mean, how did you do the fundraising process? How did you meet, the founders of Soul Cycle or,
Yeah,
Heyday, and how was that process?
totally. I mean, it was, I would say from the fundraising, that was like the one thing that I had done from my background as it relates to this business. So, in terms of, building out a clear business plan and a model and a deck and all of that, that was something that I was really comfortable with and able to do fluidly. And
Sure.
then in terms of kind of trying to meet the right investors and things like that, there's a number of different strategies. I mean, of course, just like really networking and getting the word out there, but also trying to really attend either panels or conferences that people were speaking at, and I could try
Mm,
to, connect with them afterwards. And then, you kind of find that once you get a couple people on board and behind you, that they're excited and willing to make introductions, and at the end of the day, it's a relatively small industry and network, and so it becomes easier to meet people that you think would be a really good fit once you've kind of got your foot in the door.
yeah. So how long was the fundraising process, and how much was
Yeah.
the initial round?
The fundraising process was, probably around 6 months, 4 to 6 months,
Okay.
to fully close the round. I think we raised around 2.5 million in the first seed and friends and family round. And that was, you know, to establish the brand, build out the first space, really get a proof of concept, and then also to launch just a limited set of our herbal formulas.
And this is in 2018?
Yeah, 2019, 2018, 2019. Yeah.
2018. Okay. Okay, great. So you raise a couple $1 million over the course
Yep.
of 4 or 6 months, start establishing the brand. Was the first step to do the herbs and the sort of e-commerce or, retail products, or was it to build out the space?
Definitely to build out the space, and that's
Okay.
like still our core focus. However, for anyone that's not familiar with how traditional Chinese medicine works, it's really a multimodality approach, and what we really care about is getting the best results possible for our clients. And the way to do that is by combining acupuncture, herbal therapy, other modalities such as nutrition, cupping, things like that. And so, for us, we were really clear in terms of the standards that we were trying to bring to the industry, and the power of the herbs. And so if you start with kind of like, how are we going to make sure that we're getting our clients the best results, it was important for us to have herbs, but that also lived up to our quality standards. And so we created
Yeah.
organic herbal formulas that undergo rigorous testing, which is harder to find. And so we started with a limited subset that we've since expanded, but that's really ancillary to the core being the studios.
Gotcha. So, how long did it take you to find the initial space? And tell us about, the build out time. I know you
Yeah.
mentioned that it was around $1 million to even open up the space.
Yeah, totally. So I think the first space, and then I guess every subsequent space you get a little bit faster and better, and you're able to apply learnings and things like that. But so the first space took longer. We, had a head start, and we're already looking at spaces in parallel to fundraising, because we wanted to be able to essentially raise and like press play on a lease. And
Yeah.
we did do like a rolling close, which enabled us to, start funding like some lease negotiations and some brand work and things like that. So it probably took us 6 to 9 months to actually find the right space. But again, it probably could have
In
gone
parallel.
faster, but it was in parallel to fundraising. And so,
Yeah.
and with any kind of first space, we looked at the whole city, and we're like constantly walking the different neighborhoods just to make sure we had an understanding. I think we came to the realization pretty quickly that it was important for us to be in Flatiron for the first location. But
Right
we
in the
did
center.
spend time kind of studying the market and trying to understand different neighborhoods and things like that.
Yeah. No, that's great. And then, for the the design and then also the build out, did you hire external people to help with that process? And
Definitely,
okay.
definitely. Did not have like any kind of GC background or architect and design background. But yeah, have been really fortunate that the partners that we've found have been really incredible, both from a real estate and from a design and contractor perspective. And they've followed, us throughout all of our future locations. But I do think, finding the right fit in terms of real estate, who understands your business, who can help you really understand your needs, who can, help you negotiate a really strong deal. Like, that's kind of everything in the brick and mortar space, because that's what drives, largely drives the economics, because rent in New York is so expensive. So it was important to me to find really strong partners. So our real estate partner is Taryn Brandis and Brand Urban. And she's worked with a bunch of different successful, food and bev and wellness entrepreneurs. And then Shelley Lynch Sparks, who's the founder of Hyphen, is our design partner.
Got it. Yeah, your spaces are really beautiful. Every time I pass by one, it's quite impressive. And then, okay, great. So now you're able to open the space. How did you get the word out initially?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think with any kind of go-to-market strategy, it's a multi-channel approach. With our very first space, we relied really heavily on press, and it was pretty easy to get amazing press, actually, because we're the first person to ever create this type of a concept in the space. So it was pretty incredible that we were like in Vogue and New York Times and, all of those types of publications, from opening and even pre-opening. And, that's kind of like tapered off. I mean, we still get a lot of great press, but it's, less of like a groundbreaking concept. And now, our largest way of getting the word out is through our clients and referrals, actually, which, makes sense with the trajectory of the business. But we've also, always relied upon local marketing is a really important strategy in terms of just partnering with all of the other businesses that are nearby us. It was really important for us to be located on the ground floor on busy streets so that we're able to, partner with businesses, but also just folks that live in the neighborhood, and they can see and walk by and feel really great about walking into a beautiful space. And then kind of like a variety of other things, whether it's events, influencers, and then of course paid media as well.
Yeah. I'm curious how much of the, on the paid side of marketing is educational content versus awareness, and how much explaining there needs to be done for acupuncture and Chinese medicine, or are you just targeting people that are already doing acupuncture?
Yeah, so our mission is really to introduce the medicine to new people that have never tried acupuncture before, and it ends up being over 60% of our clients who walk in the door have never tried ever, which is something that we're really proud of. And so I think there's a huge amount of education that we need to do, again, like as a category creating brand. I think of it as layers of an onion that you have to kind of like peel back, but we kind of have to start with even fear of needles and the fact that acupuncture needles are not, it's not the same as a hypodermic needle. It's not the same as a tattoo needle. It's more like a gentle cat whisker, and then all the way through, even just, as I mentioned, kind of my own personal experience was that I started with chronic pain and had no idea that there was all these other benefits. So absolutely explaining, here's what the benefits are, here's what acupuncture is good for, but then, kind of diving deeper into here's what the medicine is, here's the history, here's the tradition, here's the culture behind it, and then also the science as well, which is, continuing to emerge, which is really exciting. But I think it's important to be able to peel away and explain all of those things. Even things like one of the most common questions that we get, kind of after does it hurt is, what's the training of an acupuncturist? And people have no idea that acupuncturists have, on top of a bachelor's degree, either a master's degree or a 6-year doctorate degree, and it's very rigorous and intense clinical training that actually starts out, with several years of study that's very similar to a Western medical education as well, in addition to, the Eastern medicine components.
Yeah. I'm curious if you've noticed how perception towards Chinese medicine, acupuncture has changed or evolved over the last 10 or so years that, you've
Yeah.
been involved in the space. Because I remember, I was drinking these herbal remedies that my parents would make, when I was
Yeah.
a child, and uh, didn't really start hearing about this until maybe mid 2010s, and then there's a lot of interest around it now.
Yeah, no, it's been incredible, and I do think that like within is a part of the story, especially in New York, but also like at a national level in terms of helping spread the awareness and educate, so that people are now more familiar and more comfortable, and even if they don't necessarily, know exactly how it works, they've heard of it, which I think is like a huge step forward. And then there's just some like major macro trends that have been really aligned with the work that we're doing with acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So, I think with COVID, it, obviously was a curse when we were, in our infancy as a brand and had to close our studio, very shortly after opening, and kind of figure all of that out. But it really put people in touch with their bodies and their health in a much bigger way, in terms of, particularly, I'd say, like around preventative care and kind of how can I take care of my immune system, and what can I do to make sure that, stress doesn't turn into like a chronic gut inflammation, and
Yeah.
things like that. And then, we've started to see a destigmatization of menopause and perimenopause and women's health more broadly, which is really great because, that's a lot of the work that we do with acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And then what's been really interesting in the last even like 12 months is this increasing focus on longevity and health span.
Yeah.
And that also, is acupuncture is really the original longevity medicine. And so it's, that's, I'd say, more of, hopefully it's not a trend, but it's more of a trend, whereas, we've been doing this for thousands of years, with a real focus on what you're trying to achieve, whether that's better sleep, less stress, decreased inflammation in the body. And so pretty incredible that that's the conversation that's happening, and we're just seamlessly a part of it.
Have you invited Brian Johnson to your clinics yet, or?
Not yet. We were
Um,
talking about acupuncture a couple weeks ago. It's definitely out there.
yeah. So back to the Flatiron first location. You said that you had just opened briefly, and then COVID happened. So
Yeah.
when did it exactly open?
We opened in like December 2018. So 2019 was like our first year of operations.
It's 1 year.
And then,
Okay.
obviously the pandemic happened in early
Yeah.
2020.
Okay. And how big was that space? And how many appointments could you have per day, or how many
Yeah.
seats were there?
The Flatiron space is around 2,200 square feet on the ground floor. And then we also have a basement, which is actually where I'm sitting right now, where our office is. And we, can do, on our busiest days, it's like around 120 appointments.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah.
And is it is everything like booked by appointment, or is it a subscription? How does the business model work?
Yeah, totally. So it's both. We take walk-ins and new clients, and, kind of non-package, but really the core of our business is a membership model, which I think is, by design for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's how we're able to bring the price point down. And that's, a big part of our mission of accessibility. And then two, it also really reflects how acupuncture works best, which is cumulatively. And so, you can
Yeah.
certainly get results in one session, but over time you're really changing the underlying, hormonal balance in your body and things like that. So it is, it's not a white pill that, you take once and are done. It's really about consistency and cumulative results. And then the third pillar of that's really important to the Within brand is community. And so,
Mm.
with our members, we do a lot of events, a lot of educational series and panels and things like that. And the idea is to bring together like-minded clients that, sometimes are going through vulnerable situations together, and we can help them feel less alone and learn from each other and things like that.
Yeah. What has the feedback been from customers, both the good and maybe more challenging feedback?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like first and foremost, what's the best part about what I get to do every day is that we've been able to have truly life-changing impact on so many different people for so many different reasons. So, and it's not just like it happens occasionally, it's like every single day there's multiple stories that happen. And so, I think some of the most obvious are when we're helping women through a fertility journey, right? And they're able to successfully get pregnant after having tried for years or tried lots of different things. And, was a really big one. I think another kind of success story that's really incredible is when we work with clients that have a chronic illness and have felt like they're gaslit or not understood by Western medicine, but they come here and, we really focus on helping our clients feel seen and heard and appreciated, and to be able to do that and then to translate that into actual medical results is really incredible. And then we work with clients who maybe they work in a physical industry, whether they're a photographer or a massage therapist or a restaurateur, and that lifestyle leads them to chronic pain or stress, or and then we're able to like actually help them get back to being able to make a livelihood. So those are just like a few examples. So that's like definitely the best part. And then I think one of our values as a brand is like we're aware that no one's ever done this before and that we need to like learn and pivot and grow. So one of our values is feedback is fuel. And so we welcome all of the, kind of customer feedback in terms of what we can do differently or what we can do better. And there's just like, tons of examples over time of how we've improved. Some of those examples that I think might be relevant are related to space design. And so we've been able to kind of change the configuration of our locations over time. We're always like really trying to deliver a hospitality focused experience. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Maybe a manager at our studio or someone that's working there isn't having the best day and they don't deliver on that experience, and that's disappointing, but we're able to turn that into coaching.
So when you mean space design, as in people didn't feel like there was enough space in it, or what do you mean by space design?
I want like the specific examples I'm thinking. So our Flatiron location, we have private rooms, but the walls don't go all the way to the ceiling, and we like that from just like the vibe and the aesthetic. But there can sometimes be like some complaints about noise, and so in future locations, we actually have like full height ceilings.
Got it. And then since the Flatiron location, it seems like there's an additional 3 more, and then I think you're also opening another one on Upper East. So tell us a little bit about when you got the conviction, like, okay, this is clearly working, let's expand, and how those expansions went.
Yeah, I mean, I think like from day one at our Flatiron location, we've kind of seen a continuing positive trajectory of new clients and members and things like that, and felt really good about it. I think like the wrench in it for us was COVID, so that just kind of set us back a couple of years, and then we needed to essentially like rebuild and then exceed like where we had gotten to in our first year. And so we've essentially been expanding since 2023, and are continuing to do that. It's been, I would say we've expanded in kind of an intentional and measured way, which has helped us understand our business even better. And now we're kind of getting to an inflection point where we're ready to start moving a lot faster and to start expanding outside of New York.
And then I think you also raised an additional funding round from, was it El Caterton, or around $5 million?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. When was that? And was that money used to, or planned to be used for, I guess, further growth and expansion, or something else?
So that was in early 2023, and that was focused on opening our Williamsburg and Upper West Side locations, and expanding our products and things like that.
Okay. So, I mean, you've been opening, it seems like about one every year, and then
one or
now
two
it seems
years.
like
exactly.
you want to push the pedal to the gas a bit.
Yeah.
What are future expansion plans?
I think there's still opportunity in New York to expand into different neighborhoods and things like that. But definitely excited to expand. From day one, we've had a vision for being a national footprint. And I think also one of the reasons why we've really focused on accessibility from a price point, but also just education standpoint, is to be able to give us permission to expand outside of New York. So we're no plans announced yet in terms of what markets, but we're constantly kind of developing and working with our board in terms of where we want to go next, and that would be post our next raise.
Okay. And how much do the herbs and the acupressure mats and the supplemental products account for in terms of maybe top line? Like how important is that or core is that to the business?
Yeah, it's around 15 to 20% of the business. Kind of fluctuates a little bit. Today, I think there's like a lot of upside potential to that in the long term.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, I think it's important to the business today for client results, but also it's a really great way for us to establish ourselves in other markets before we enter there from a brick and mortar perspective. And so we have a track record of having a retail presence in markets like LA and Miami, and also doing events there, through our retail partners or things like that. And that helps us better understand the customer base, helps us have some data in terms of where we'd want to open and things like that.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you're also in, over 200 retail partners, which is extremely impressive. How are you doing both businesses? Because they're, could be completely separate businesses, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not for the faint of heart, one. But two, I mean, like I keep really emphasizing, is that they really are related. And so, our largest distribution channel for our products is our own studios. And so, I think that kind of sets the foundation. And then obviously we work with other retail partners. And I think what we're, really working towards is making sure that we have the right infrastructure to support both. And today we've really focused on the studios as the core, with the products business being, particularly with external partners, being more of an organic and inbound kind of process. We haven't put a ton of money or spend behind direct consumer, but that's definitely something that we'll start to focus on more in the future.
Yeah. Well, what is your team structure like?
Yeah, I mean, we're still, I would say, a lean corporate team. Our studio teams are where the bulk of our employees are, because we have,
Sure.
a large population of acupuncturists at each studio, plus, management, front desk, facilities, things like that.
But on the corporate team, like how many people?
We're less than
like
10 people today, so.
Oh, okay. And then is there someone focused just on retail, someone focused on the herbal side, someone focused on growth, or how's it structured?
Sure. So we have a head of product development who's fractional, is an acupuncturist that focuses on the product development. And then we have a director of studio operations who really oversees everything. But then underneath her, there's a head of acupuncturists and a head of retail. And so they kind of all work together to make sure that we're able to deliver on the customer experience, support our population of acupuncturists, maintain compliance with healthcare regulations and things like that. And then, I'd say our other team is marketing, and we have, several team members that focus on different channels and a variety of full-time and part-time team members.
I see. And how has your role changed since 2018 to 2026? What were you focusing on then and spending most of your time doing, and what are you doing now?
Yeah. I think, like, for me, I still feel like I wear a lot of different hats and, oversee everything from finance to marketing to ops. But I think where it's changed is obviously just having more support. So now it's more of kind of strategy and oversight versus like in the weeds doing everything. Because definitely when we opened, I was at the front desk every day and, doing whatever it took at the studio. And now, I'm definitely more spread out across studios, so it's less like execution and more implementing systems of scale is what we're saying. And then I still, spend a lot of time with investor relations and fundraising and things like that. Yeah, and then I think continue to be our biggest evangelist and try to get the word out about acupuncture and within.
Yeah, that's great. And then I think your next location, you're also opening up in the Upper West. Is that correct?
Upper East. So Upper
Oh, the
West
Upper
is
East side.
open, and is a great location. And interestingly enough, both Upper East and Upper West used to be Dry Bar, and now
Oh,
those locations had closed, and we've taken them over. So they're actually very similar in terms of like build out and design. But yeah, Upper East is opening 209 East 76th at Third Avenue on June 26th, which is super exciting.
exciting. And then for people that are just starting out and interested in opening a space in New York City, I know that you had gone from 0 to now opening potentially 5. What
Yeah.
advice do you have for people who are trying to open in New York?
Find an amazing real estate lawyer, find an amazing broker, and then I mean, for me, it was really helpful to have founders either be advisors or investors that had done it before and done it multiple
Sure.
times, because they've seen it all, right? It's like, I think in real estate in New York, like there's no such thing as like a one size fits all. Like every deal is custom and every landlord is different and there's like different nuances. So you want to be able to learn from people that have really seen it all and can help advise on different situations.
Yeah, definitely. And then also on the venture funding route,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on prospective, people opening spaces going the venture route versus trying to bootstrap? And I know obviously if the build out is, extremely expensive, there may not be a choice, but if you did have a choice, how would you think about it?
A few things. I think, I mean, if you can bootstrap, I tend to think that's always like the route to pursue, at least until you get to a certain proof of concept, because then you have like a stronger perspective when you're going out to raise money. And then I think, secondarily is not all venture understands brick and mortar, and some say
Yeah.
that they do and then they don't. And, we've definitely gone down a rabbit hole with, a fund that we thought really like actually was interested in brick and mortar only to like get to the end and they're like, we're actually not going to do four wall. So I would say, make sure that they already have existing portfolio companies that are brick and mortar and that they're truly like behind that, because it's important, because it's a different return horizon and it takes a lot different set of skills and operating metrics and things like that, to be successful in brick and mortar space. So I would just make sure you find partners that truly get it.
Yeah. And did you also consider alternate forms of funding outside of just venture capital, or was there also like, I don't know, potentially private equity, more traditional private equity capital,
Is
or?
private equity. That's our, lead investor now.
Oh, yes.
But, PE doesn't come in until later. So
Mm,
that's definitely the move later on,
yeah.
once you've established proof of concept. And we're even like very early stage. We're in kind of an emerging fund that they had structured to test out the hypothesis of investing in earlier stage companies that could then, feed into their more traditional growth portfolio.
Okay. Gotcha. Um, what's taking up most of your time right now, and what's on the roadmap for this year?
Yeah, I mean, definitely our Upper East Side opening is like top of mind, which we're so excited. We wanted to be in that neighborhood since we opened our Flatiron location, but because of our disciplined strategy around deals and rent and economics, we just hadn't found a location that fit until now. So we're super excited about that, and then raising our growth round of funding to be able to scale outside of New York.
Okay. And you're planning to do that over this year, or is it next year?
Yeah, within probably Q3.
Okay. How many locations of Within do you think there could be throughout the U.S. if all goes according to plan?
Yeah, so our growth plan really calls for like 60 plus locations, but I can easily see, 80 to 100. For me, like the magic number would be 100. But again, like pointing to accessibility of the concept and the brand is we've really structured ourselves with that in mind.
Okay. And is the plan eventually, I don't know, to sell to another business, IPO, to run it as a cash flowing business? What is the plan longer term?
I mean, I think that there's a number of different longer term potential that we're working towards kind of any of those, but there's definitely a PE acquisition. There's roll ups happening of like-minded wellness brands by strategic players, and I think for us, there's also a lot of activity happening within the healthcare space specifically
Hmm.
that's interesting in terms of different types of consolidation and mergers and things like that. So kind of keeping our eye on both strategic acquisitions and exits as well as financial exits.
Yeah. And have you also considered acquiring other acupuncture clinics and converting them to withins as a faster way to grow as well?
Yeah, we'd have definitely looked at that type of a growth strategy, and would think of it. I think it would really make a lot of sense outside of New York.
Hmm.
So we've definitely been thinking about that as well, and identified. There's not like a huge amount of kind of multi-unit studio concepts that exist, but even individual practices could be really attractive as a way
Yeah.
to enter a new market.
Yeah. Cool. What is your current wellness plan or structure? How often do you get acupuncture?
Yeah.
What kind of herbs do you take, and for what?
All of the herbs. I take all the herbs. Yeah, no, it's my non-negotiable in terms of an acupuncture session a week. Lately, I've been alternating every other week, body acupuncture and then facial acupuncture, which is
Hmm.
an innovation that we launched at the end of last year, and is could be an alternative to Botox.
Oh, wow.
So it's really amazing. Stimulates production of collagen, helps reduce fine line and wrinkles. Can also actually do it with Botox as a way to make sure that you're getting circulation and blood flow and things like that underneath. But we combine it with gua sha and red light, so it's been a really fun innovation, and it's definitely opened us up into a more of a beauty audience as well. And so
Yeah.
love welcoming new clients in. But what I love about facial is that you also get a lot of the same body benefits as well.
Hmm. And what is the focus? Because I know that acupuncture can be good for a lot of different things like the
Yeah.
facial, but then general health, and we talked about longevity before. How do you pick which one to focus on, or is it you're tapping into many different ones?
Yes, our top three are really stress, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, acute pain, kind of like pain of all types, whether that's tech neck, migraines, carpal tunnel, sciatica, just low back, shoulder pain, and then digestive health.
Hmm.
So that could be anything from metabolism support to ulcerative colitis. And then, probably after that, the largest category is women's health, kind of across the board from cycle regulation to fertility to menopause.
I see. Oh, so your target market is, I assume, women, probably ages 20 to 40 or 20 to 50 or something, or
We tend to see slightly older clients because your health starts to, I think, make you feel less invincible once you hit 30.
yeah.
Not that we even see like teens and things like that working on anxiety or hormonal acne. And then I think we definitely skew well beyond just 40 to 50 into the 60s and things like that.
Hmm.
And then we've seen it's definitely more women than men, but that's been decreasing over time, which I think is great, and is also just consistent with what happens across wellness industries.
Yeah.
So,
Makes sense.
amazing.
Well, awesome. Like looking back on, this probably 8+ year journey, and knowing everything that you know now, is there anything that you would have changed if you can go back in time?
Ooh, I mean, I wish COVID hadn't happened. That's like kind of the number one thing. I mean, I think it's like smaller tweaks here and there, or But generally, I've been relatively happy with kind of the trajectory of, how things have gone. And I'm looking forward to accelerating our expansion.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, this has been a lot of fun. If people want to follow along or reach out, what's the best way for them to do so?
You can just follow us on Instagram and TikTok at within, WTHN, without the I's. And then our website is within.com, without the I's also.
All right. Well, if anyone needs acupuncture in New York and hopefully beyond, they'll know where to go. But really appreciate you taking the time, Michelle.
Thanks, Alan. It was so great to chat. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, bye.